school together. We both got our nutrition degree. He's taken it to the next step. He's got a certification in precision nutrition, and he's also becoming the next level that they offer, right? So he is, this is his domain. He does a great job in counseling people and helping them understand the food they need to eat. So, there.
Just a little background on kind of me in general. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. I moved here about 15 years ago and I joined the Army. So I'm active duty Army in Fort Hood for about 5 years. Separated from active duty, went to college. That's where I met Jared. Got my degree in nutrition and foods. During that time, I did a bunch of different internships. One being at hospital, nursing home, and then finally at a gym. I just realized that was, the medical nutrition therapy side of things wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. The fitness aspect of things was something I really enjoyed, so I stuck with that. A gym up north in Lakeway gave me an opportunity to kind of do a lot of nutritional counseling and stuff like that, so I ended up taking it and getting a personal training certification. Then started working at Westlake CrossFit, also with Jared over there, and then I started doing these workshops, doing the challenges, and now I'm kind of moving to where I do these challenges and workshops all over the Austin area. So, but that gives you a little background on me. The one thing about nutrition that I love so much is the fact that it's ever changing, okay, and that it's so individualized. So it's almost like a science experiment every single time you work with someone, because it's everybody gains and loses differently, and they adapt to different types of how you eat, timing, and things like that. So it's very interesting to me how each individual person adapts it. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about kind of I consider this like the basics of nutrition, right? It does dive a little deeper into things, so if you guys have questions, if I'm not making sense, please let me know. I will be writing the majority of things on the board, so all of the stuff that I say will be on the boards just in case, just for clarity. Okay? So, name's Eric. I'll get a good, better one. And please ask questions. It just makes it more engaging, more fun. You learn more, the more questions you ask. Okay. So first and foremost, what we're going to do is just kind of outline what a typical American diet looks like, right? So busy Americans, right? That's the normal word that we're always got going on. That we're just constantly busy. I hate it, but I use it as well. So I'm just going to write out breakfast. Snack, lunch, snack, and dinner. Now, obviously, these snacks can be in different places, and throughout the day, some people don't even have 2 snacks, just kind of throwing that out there. So what's a typical breakfast? Maybe not you guys, because you all work out and stuff like that, but what's a typical breakfast? Like something grab and go, you're out the door. Cereal. Wow.
American breakfast taco.
Okay.
Austin staple.
Yeah, cereal, breakfast taco. Coffee probably, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Some kind of bar. Yeah.
There's a lot.
Right, so bagels, yeah, things fall into that. I know my dad really, he likes McDonald's, their like patties or whatever, so like egg McMuffin.
Fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank, right? Okay, so that's pretty typical. Something quick, because there you can get a coffee and things like that. It's pretty typical. What would be a good snack that someone's going to grab?
Yogurt or
bars, chips, things that would be found in like convenience store or like even like a vending machine, right? Yeah. Sometimes nuts in here, right? Okay. What's a typical lunch?
sandwich.
That's by far probably the most typical sandwich, right? And that can vary from here in Austin, like Thundercloud stuff to Subway or, wherever you live, basically. Every once in a while you see somebody who goes out to lunch, they have a kind of more elaborate lunch, but for the most part, fast and easy is a sandwich. What about another snack? This could also fall here, because a lot of people, they got busy work between here and here to dinner, and then snack kind of falls right about, bedtime.
Yeah, that's when I want carbs.
Yeah.
Crackers
Oh, yeah.
and
So what would fall there, even if it fell like after
Cereal.
dinner?
yeah,
It's a cereal. Oh, nice. I'll never forget, as a kid, when you're a kid, you stay up and watch nothing really on TV. But my dad used to wake up in the middle of the night and just get a big bowl. I felt like he used to dump the whole box in there and just sit there and just watch TV.
It's a mixing
Yeah,
bowl.
it was
cereal.
amazing. It was amazing. I couldn't believe how much shoveling in. But I mean,
Like
this would also
cheese crackers.
crackers. Okay, good. What about for dinner? Dinner's kind of one of those that people generally do pretty well on, right? Because they've got a little bit more time to cook, right? If they're cooking for a family, they're usually cooking in mass quantities, so they're probably going to do, like a pasta. If it's Friday, everyone likes pizza. I don't know why that's a typical day for that, just because it's the end of the week, maybe. But some, meat and potatoes, and that, this could just be also like meat and rice or whatever, but you'll also see some veggies in there. Right? So, now what we're going to do is we're going to that's a pretty typical day. I mean, I would say on average, it'll vary, obviously, what they have, but for the most part, that looks pretty solid. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through and break down each one of the meals into like their macronutrients, okay? When I say macronutrients, I mean what they're made up of primarily, okay? And that is carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, okay? So when you look at breakfast, what's cereal primarily made of? Carbs, okay. Breakfast taco.
It's a good mix.
Okay, it's a pretty good mix. Depending on the place you go to, some places they kind of shortchange you a little bit on the eggs and bacon and stuff that goes inside it, but you've got some carbs, you've got some protein, and some fats in there, so that's a pretty good mix. Coffee is pretty much nothing. What do you think's in a bar or bagel?
Carbs and a little protein,
Depending on the type of bar. Exactly.
Bagel don't know.
Okay. So far we've got a little bit of protein, no matter what we had, right? And then a bagel's gonna be all carbs, and then egg McMuffin, probably the same kind of category as that guy, right?
It's not terrible.
Yeah. Within this, they use flour, tortilla, maybe some, and it's not homemade, it's probably some bad fats in that, just that, and then same thing with the egg McMuffin, right? So yeah. So depending on what you do.
At least you know there's no meat there.
That's true, yeah.
Oh yeah, egg McMuffin.
And all those other
yeah, exactly.
breakfast sandwiches.
So with the snack, what do we got? What's in yogurt?
Protein and carbs.
It's actually so dairy falls into the so it's a combination. So it actually has all three. So that would actually be a pretty good choice there if we're gonna go with just a good yogurt. As long as we didn't add like things to it, or it was already comes with like vanilla added to it, honey, things like that, right? What would be bars? Okay, same as so carbs. We got a little bit of protein here, okay, and a little bit of fat. Chips, fat carbs, okay, nuts, maybe some fats, good. Sandwich.
Maybe carbs.
So it's gonna look like this kind of carb,
Yeah.
a little bit of everything and a little bit right in the middle, right? So primarily carbohydrates. Because we're kind of looking at what mostly it's going to be made up of. Sandwich is going to be, majority of the times when you go to a place, you get a sub or whatever, it's going to be a nice fat bun and a little bit of meat inside, right? I'm always disappointed when I do. Cereal or crackers?
All carbs.
Okay.
You have cheese with the crackers.
Maybe,
a little
yeah.
bit of
A little bit of goodness in there. Protein and fat, yeah. Dinner. We went with pasta. Carbs, okay. Pizza, carbs and fat, okay. Meat, potatoes, got a mixture there, good stuff, right? Protein, carbs. Yeah, so you got a little bit there, and then veggies.
Carbs.
Yeah, there you go. Alright, we're I was going to ask that question later. Now we've got that out of the way. All right, so what we're seeing here is a pretty good trend of lots of carbohydrates, right? Now, what this also does is carbohydrates are generally higher in calories, right? And because the majority of these are all very processed for the most part, they're also very low in nutrient, okay? So if someone was living this type of lifestyle primarily, okay, they're living in a low nutrient, high calorie diet, okay? This is the lifestyle they're living in, okay? One of the reasons why we have such an epidemic with obesity and things like that in our society is because of that. And not to mention just different diseases as well, which we're about to get into, okay? Now, with this, when we're looking at these, as far as, I'll move this, what is carbohydrate primarily made up of? When it goes in your body, what is it broken down? Sugar. Okay? Okay? Now, we talked about fats. Anywhere along in here, do you think there's any kind of good fats? We talked about if it's processed, right, it probably contains some form of bad fats, right? Okay? And then, now that we're on the topic of something, as far as processed foods go, we can also talk about the main thing that always comes up here, not necessarily here, but it's a big deal now, it's gluten, right? So everything's gluten-free now, everything talks about that, right? We're going to talk about what actual gluten is, okay? So a lot of processed foods actually do contain, especially breads, do contain gluten as one of their ingredients, okay? All right, before we dive into these, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about inflammation, okay? Mostly because from now here on forward, we're going to talk a lot about it, okay? So inflammation can be good or it can be bad, all right? So the good inflammation is like your body kind of inflames a little bit when you work out, right? The good inflammation is when you're happy about something, right? That you're actually excited or things like that. Your body actually has an inflammatory state that happens during that thing. Those are all the kind of the good stressors, right? Although it's a stress, it's considered a good stress, but it's good inflammation. Inflammation also happens if you get sick, right? So if you, like you get a cold or whatever, and your lymph nodes in your neck or you're behind your ears or whatever, they inflame, right? It's your body trying to get itself better, so it's inflaming so that it feels like it's being attacked, kind of in a sense, so it's treating itself in a sense. It's also the same thing as if someone punched me in my arm, right? That's going to swell up a little bit, and I'm going to have a little problem with some mobility on it because it's inflamed and it's basically treating itself, right? So kind of have a general idea of what inflammation does, right? Body also inflames when you eat, okay? So when you eat, the inflammation that happens is due to because it's trying to absorb those things and it's trying to break down the food and all this other stuff. So it inflames in order to start to absorb those nutrients and break down food, okay? In a general sense. There's a lot more that goes with it, but in a general sense, that's what happens, okay? Now, the rate at which we have inflammation is generally dictated by what we're eating, okay? If we're eating lots of these items, right? Sugar, bad fats, and gluten, our body is going through a constant high and low of inflammation, okay? Which means we're living in a constant inflammatory state period, okay? Now, an easy way to describe the sugar part is the fact that if we have high doses of sugar at one time, right, our blood sugar spikes, right? Pancreas releases some insulin to try to slow it down, but because it spikes so high, it can't slow it, and then we hit this lag period, right? So we're constantly going through this, and when our blood sugar spikes, that's the inflammatory response in our body, okay? I don't want to get too far into science with things, I just want to let you know that's kind of what happens with the amount of sugar, right? With the bad fats, fats can be categorized into saturated, polyunsaturated, and then monounsaturated. Okay. Now the way they differ in sense is kind of how long and rigid their chains are. Okay. The longer and more rigid the chain are, which is more likely found in fats that are actually made or processed, right? The harder they are for us to break them down. Okay. Now something that's harder for us to digest or break down is going to cause an inflammation because now it's kind of lingering around and it's sitting there, right? And in this case, with bad fats, kind of causes plaque in our arteries, right? Because it can't be broken down, things like that. That leads to some cardiovascular disease, some heart issues, things of that sort, okay? Same thing with the sugar, like we were talking about, the constant influx of high blood sugar and things can also cause things of diabetes, and just there's a slew of like things that can actually happen with sugar, okay? Now gluten, does that all make sense with, I know I kind of went through that fast, but I want you guys to understand, okay? And I don't want to give it too much of a chemistry sense. I want you guys just to have a general sense of what happens. Now, with gluten, do you guys actually know what gluten is?
Protein.
Okay.
From wheat.
Yes. Okay. So it's a bonding protein that's found in wheat barley. Okay, primarily. Now, what it's being used for now, okay, is that it's being used for like mass production of like processed foods and things like that because it is emulsifying. It's an emulsifying agent, right? So it helps things kind of stick together or help make it more longer for shelf stable type things, okay? Now what it does in our body is, because it's something like we talked about before, it's foreign, right? Or if it's tough for us to break down or digest, is it actually bonds to our stomach lining. And then over time of ingesting it quite a bit, right, it eats away at our stomach lining and eventually makes little bitty holes in our stomach lining, right? Now, what ends up happening when we eat and we have food in there, and we have these little bitty holes in our stomach, now that food that's undigested goes into our bloodstream, right? What would that be if there's a foreign object in our bloodstream? What would that cause our body to do? Attack it, right? So that's another inflammatory response that our body's going to have. So we're living in this constant inflammatory state. Now, with that being said, gluten in general, there's only a low percentage of people that have actually been diagnosed with celiac disease, which means that you can't even be around it, smell it, or anything like that, right? And then there's another percentage of like 12% that show a severe intolerance. But for the most part, we all have some form of intolerance. It just means how much we're doing. If we're doing it every once in a while, not going to be much of an issue, right? Same thing as if we were doing these every once in a while, it's not going to cause that much of an issue. But if we're living this constantly, we're living in a high inflammatory state. Which means, because we just talked about all the different diseases that can happen with this, right? We're living in a disease state. So our body is constantly sick. We just don't necessarily, we're used to the feeling, right? So we just don't realize it over time, okay? Now, how do we reverse that? I'm going to show you. Before I get into that, so any questions on this so far? Go ahead.
On the fats, so with saturated, poly, and mono, what
Very
was
good.
like good, worst, best?
So those are all, they're all good in their own right. Okay?
Okay.
So the more natural source that you can get them from, the better.
Right.
They're bad when, one, they're taken in large consumptions, and they're bad when they're taken in from more processed like sources. So like a bad fat that's like a trans fat, or like a partially hydrogenated fat, things like that. Things that are like genetically made, those are going to be the bad fats, because ultimately our bodies aren't designed to break those things down. We're designed to break down more natural foods that come from the earth, right? So the more processed something is, the harder it is for our bodies to actually break it down. Does that make more sense?
Yeah.
So saturated. So for the most part, if you stick with saturated fat and monounsaturated, and lower and a little bit of the poly, then you're good to go. And then for the most part, I can give you some specifics if you want those. Mostly on saturated, it's going to be animal fat. So things like just your animal, so pork, ribeyes and things like that. That's going to be like bacon and stuff. Yeah, so eggs are going to have a little bit of saturated fat. Your nuts and seeds are going to have a little bit, but they're also going to have some mono unsaturated as well. So and coconut is actually a saturated fat, but it's unique in a sense that it's a medium chain. And that's what I was getting at with like the chain. It's very easily to break down, so our body doesn't actually store it. It's utilized very quickly as energy. Okay, so that's why coconut's like all over the charts lately about like how good it is for you. Yeah, that is really good. All right, so any questions on this, guys? All right, so now we're going to just talk about some good sources of each. Okay, protein, carbohydrates, fats. I'm going to give you guys a few like good habits for healthy eating, and then we're going to kind of line out a good day. Okay, and then that's kind of when then we'll go from questions there and talk about like different like supplements, limiting factors, and stuff like that. Okay. All right, so good sources. We got protein, carbs, fats. Okay, what's good sources of protein?
Leaner meats.
Okay, lean meats.
So non-lean meats.
When we say lean meats, that's a pretty broad statement. So that would fall like chicken, fish, some pork, right? Turkey. Game meat actually falls under that. I mean, well, I mean, game meat's its own category, but for the most part, it is a lean meat. But beef would fall under this too, as long as it's a lean cut. Okay. Every once in a while, if you're feeling like a good ribeye, there's nothing wrong with having it, you know, because it's like I said, it's an animal fat. Your body's going to process it a little bit better. Okay. But for the most part, on a regular basis, you kind of want to just stick with a leaner cut meat. Okay. So very good. Eggs would fall under that as a protein, because we're talking about, remember, what it makes up primarily of. All right, good. Carbs.
So no dairy.
So, I mean, so that would actually fall here. Dairy is, yeah. And we'll talk about some good sources. Remind me, we'll talk about some good sources about that later, okay? And carbohydrates.
Good sources?
Good sources. Veggies.
OGI.
Oh, look at you. You got some knowledge in you. All right, so what falls under veggies? Would be some good veggies?
Broccoli, asparagus.
Dark leafy, just to generalize, and to save space on the board. So dark leafy vegetables, so that's going to be things like broccoli, spinach, kale, chard. Those are all going to be really good sources of high nutrients. They're actually, a lot of the plant-based diets are like they have to eat a lot of those because they're very high in some majority of them are high in protein as well. There's lots of studies that broccoli actually is shown to decrease risk for cancer in men. So, but yeah, there's lots of really good stuff in the dark leafies. Other ones are going to be like cauliflower, right? Carrots.
You know, sugar in here.
Carrots do have quite a bit of sugar, but I still like eating them, and they're still good for you. One thing I like to do is add a lot of color to my diet, and the more color, especially with vegetables, the more antioxidants and polyphenols and things like that fall in. Polyphenols. What's that? Beets is actually a good one. It's going to be, so beets are good. There's lots of research, newer research on the fact that it's an anti-inflammatory. So it's good. A lot of runners use it. They juice it and then they have it after like a good run. But yes, beets would fall under that. They're one of those ones that, because they grow underground, they're a little different, right, than your norm. But yeah, beets. Any other? We don't have to keep on veggies. That's a good.
Beans or?
So beans would actually fall on beans. So
Really?
a green bean would fall under a bean. Yep. Because it's a pod. Anything that falls in a pod is a legume or a bean. All right. So what other carbs?
Fruit.
fruit. And now when I'm listing these first, okay, I want you guys to think of high nutrient foods. Okay, we'll get into some of the other ones because there are lots of carbohydrates that are actually good for you. They're just not all high nutrient. Okay, so we're talking high nutrient right now. Blueberries. So we just go berries because all berries are very high in antioxidants, really good. More color the better. Same thing there. Apple, right? Pear. Citrus fruits. Some of the lower nutrient fruits are going to be like melons, watermelons of that kind of like nature, you know. They have more sugar than they have nutrients for the most part. There's nothing necessarily wrong with them. They're just, you know, like I said, they just don't possess kind of the antioxidants that we're looking for. That's a good start with carbs. I'm going to start another category for carbs in a second once we get past fats. What's good sources of fats? Olive oil. So fish for the most part is going to fall under a protein, but you are correct in the sense that it does possess good fats. And I consider fish oil a actual supplement, so it's not food. Yeah.
Nuts
and seeds.
Avocado.
Absolutely. Love avocado. Okay. Coconut. Coconut oil, and it can also be like tea, or like whole. Because I'll throw like shredded coconut and like my oats and stuff like that in the morning, so we'll get fat. But yeah, that's a good start there. Now under oils, there's tons of different good oils. Truffle oil, macadamia oil, the nut oils basically. Sesame's okay. The only reason, the problem with some of the oils, and even starting to get into like the olive, is the more they're mass produced, and we get into this a lot, right? The more something's mass produced, the more they have to make it cheaper to make, right? So when, like for instance, canola oil used to be pretty good, right? When it was pure. When it was a pure rapeseed, it was made from rapeseed, and it was pure. But now that it's mass produced, it's getting worse because they're adding different oils like vegetable oils and things in there that cause it to be not quite as good, right? So now it's modified basically. Olive oil, they're doing that as well. So a good test for your olive oil to find out if you actually have a pure one is put in the fridge. If it solidifies after about 15 minutes, then you got a good oil. If it doesn't, then it means it's mixed. So we're lucky here. I'm sure there's other places that have them in different cities, but you can go make your own olive oil. I mean, I've seen those places that, right? There's the only one I've seen is up north, but it's pretty unique. But yeah, good fats. All right, so I'm going to erase the carbs real quick and then talk about some good. I'm going to categorize these as dense carbs, okay? And the reason I categorize them more like that is, one, they're higher in carbohydrate than the last group of that we just talked about, and they're also lower in nutrient, okay? These are good to have in a lot of different reasons, okay? One, to add variety to your diet, right? So it's not just boring if you're just eating meat, veggies, and some good fats, right? Another is they do have lots of different qualities, especially if you're an athlete, right? You want to get those extra carbohydrates in there to help speed up recovery, and then to just add calories as well, okay? Ultimately, you could live off these good proteins, vegetables, and fats, but that's pretty good, right? I mean, really. So dense carbohydrates are going to be ones that are not processed, okay? So that's what we're looking for. So what do you guys think of those? Tomatoes, okay? And I actually don't categorize on these. Potato is got a bad rap just because of the way it's made, right? For the most part, generally speaking, most potatoes are all good for you in some sort. It's all in how they're made. If they're fried in bad oil, they're going to be bad. But if they're baked or boiled or things like that, like those potatoes are going to have some benefit to them, okay? Now, obviously, some are higher in fiber than others, right? Sweet potato being the most delicious, in my opinion. But for the most part, most of the potatoes are going to be okay for you, okay? What else?
Rice.
We'll say wild or brown, okay? And the reason actually why, actually you should just say wild brown rice, because I'll talk about that in just a second, but white rice is actually, it's processed, okay, for the most part. Wild brown, okay, the reason you want that is they can actually do brown rice by just adding things to it to make it brown, okay? That's kind of how they actually, do whole wheat as well. So, you know, we generalize whole wheat by sight in a sense, right? Oh, it's brown, that's got to be whole wheat bread. Well, they just add molasses to it to make it brown. So that's just a cheaper way of making it, because ultimately it only has to have a small percentage of whole wheat in it for them to actually put whole wheat on the label. Okay. But yeah, so that's if you're gonna go with rice, wild brown rice is gonna be good. What's next?
Quinoa.
Quinoa, very good. I always jack that one up. Pretty sure that's right. So what's unique about this, and I actually really like quinoa, is that when I'm talking with a lot of my plant-based clients, this is that one grain, pseudo grain. Actually comes from a fruit, believe it or not. It possesses all the essential amino acids. Okay, amino acids are what protein's made of. Okay, so it's something that I recommend for them to have as much as they can, because then they're going to be getting the most. Because one issue that plant-based diets generally have, vegans and vegetarians and stuff like that, is they lack protein, okay? Which, in general, that last diet we just showed, okay, if someone was eating like that, lacked protein as well, okay? They lacked some micronutrients, which is vitamins and minerals, okay? And they also lacked a lot of protein, okay? Which, if you work out and things like that, like, you absolutely need that. Not to mention your body just needs that in general to just function, okay? What else?
Bread in there? I mean, you mentioned
Bread's
it's
made.
These are not
modified.
processed.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oats.
oats.
Yep. And primarily 100% whole grains, which you're looking for. Okay. And now even you need to look for, if you want it to completely be clean, gluten-free as well, because they'll process it in plants that have the same cheaper ones next to the more, cleaner organic ones, right? That's a good list. There's other ones. Beans kind of fall in that, okay? And actually, I put dairy in that more just because it possesses lactose, okay? I actually, for the most part, I have to watch my dairy intake just because I do have an intolerance. If people don't have an intolerance, I'm completely cool with them having it, because it is a good way to get a good source of protein, carbohydrates, and fats. But I usually suggest either a raw milk or a whole milk, something that's less pasteurized. Right, we just talked about that earlier with the eggs. Right, it's going to be less tampered with. The less tampered with something is, the better off you're going to be, just because your body's going to be able to process it better. Okay. Now, when I talk about these, I do tell people, especially if body composition is a goal of theirs, that this should be limited and used sparingly, and primarily used only on training days. Okay, so, and what I mean by that is if they're working out, that way their body's going to utilize those extra carbohydrates, okay, and they'll be able to function and recover faster. Okay. Any question on good sources?
Does beer fall under it?
I wish it did. So, and we'll talk about some of those limiting factors and kind of how to do things once we get that to the towards the end. All right. So, 5 habits to kind of live by. Five good habits. We'll say good habits. Pretty sure it has a cooler name. Is eat slowly and to 80% full. Now, 2 reasons for this. One, eat slowly. You're actually enjoying your food, right? You're enjoying the company that's with you. You actually take your time. You're not just rushing and slamming the food down your mouth, right? And it's going to help with this 80% full thing. It actually takes 20 minutes, okay, generally speaking, for your stomach to register to your brain that you're full, okay, or that you've even eaten anything, to be honest. Now, obviously, your brain knows that you're eating, but for the most part, for it to register that you're actually, full, it takes roughly 20 minutes. Okay, but overall, that's just going to keep you from overeating as well. Okay, and it's going to keep you in that kind of happy medium to where your metabolism is able to like process everything. You're not actually storing a lot of fats and sugars. Okay. Next is going to be eat a protein with every meal. Okay, and that's important just because we saw that we were lacking that so much in the traditional kind of diet, right? So if you eat a protein with every diet, you're more than likely going to hit that marker of what you're supposed to be having on a daily basis. Okay. Eat a veggie or fruit. I'm going to say and or fruit with every meal. Now, for the most part, I agree mostly with the veggie part, okay? The fruit part, I would use those as snacks, okay? Because you don't want to have too many of the fruits in on a daily basis just because they are pretty high in sugar, okay? And some of them, for the most part, don't possess the kind of nutrients that vegetables do, okay? So that's why I would say stick mainly with the vegetables, okay? And then sparingly with the fruit. I generally recommend 2 servings of fruit for females, 4 for men, okay? If you're more active, then it ups it a little bit. Okay, some endurance athletes are definitely going to increase their fruit intake. Actually, if someone has a very hard sweet tooth, to keep them away from actually eating sweets, I actually recommend adding in an extra fruit a day as well. That's why I said it's really like a science experiment where I'm just playing with people's diets to find out what actually works for them. Okay. Next is eat dense carbs sparingly and on training days. I should say and on mostly training days. I'm not expecting everyone to just eat, meat, vegetables, and good fats all the time when they're not working out. But for the most part, that you should kind of stick with that. If you're going to work out in the morning, having a little bit at night is not too bad. Okay, not to mention, it actually has shown to actually help people sleep if they have issues sleeping. Having a little extra carbohydrate, dense carbohydrate, a good one at night is going to actually help you sleep a little bit better. As long as you're balancing it out with all these, right? If you have protein, good fat, things like that. Okay. And lastly is going to be eat a variety of good fats daily. Right, and we talked about kind of a little bit of the saturated poly and mono, right? You want to kind of get a good variety of those per day. So we listed out the different fats. So a animal source would be a good source of saturated, right? Nuts and seeds, a little bit of monounsaturated, some avocado, right? Now you've got a good balance of kind of your day, right? And one, it adds variety. It's not as boring, right? You're not eating the same stuff over and over. But eating a good variety of good fats is just going to make your body operate on a better level. One, you should know that our cells actually, around our cells, is protected by a phospholipid, okay, which is a lipid is a fat, okay? So if you think about it, the better our fats are, right? The better fats that we take in, the healthier our cells are, and the more permeable they are to intake more nutrients, okay? So the healthier our body is, right? The healthier our cells are, the better we operate. Alright, so knowing all this, knowing the good sources, knowing the 5 good habits, let's line out a good day. And you know what, we're going to say that we're working out this day. We're going to work out right here. And then we'll put a snack on. Breakfast. Okay. We just remember the flour is processed. Take away the flour, right? So you're still looking on a convenience factor, right? Is that what you're going for? Okay. So something that could be fast, right? Would be if you did it right, you could do some eggs, oats, right? You got a little bit of a dense carb there. You got some protein, right? And then good fats if you cook it with. Or you can even have some bacon, right? And that just adds more protein and a little bit of fat, right? So that's kind of like, it doesn't take that long to make those. You just got to make that time, right? And if anything, all you have to do is if you got your taco, right? Just take that tortilla off, right? And if you did that and you ended up getting some avocado, you got eggs, bacon, and avocado, you can turn this guy into a bowl. If you live in Austin, you can make that. I know that happens. Chipotle does stuff like that. Like those are all over the place. Snack Kitchen. So those are all very easy things to get. Okay. What are we looking for a snack?
About hummus, could you do like crudité and
it's a bean. So yes, so you could say like a veggie, right? So we'll say broccoli and hummus. Believe it or not, like one that's you would go without like hummus itself, or like that this isn't made from a bean, would be baba ganoush.
okay.
I am actually a big fan. I love it. It's made from eggplant, and to me it tastes very similar to hummus. I can't spell it, so I'm just gonna say baba.
Okay.
I might be able to get it out there. Ganoush. That's close. But another good snack would just be fruit, something easy, right? So fruit, nuts, balanced, right? And in my opinion, it's balanced because the blood sugar spike that's going to happen from a little bit of the fruit, I'm going to balance it out with fat. Okay. It's one thing we didn't really get into, but I did touch on it a little bit. You said something about the GI effect, right? So the higher the glycemic something is, right, the more our blood sugar spikes. The more we can stick with those 5 habits is the way we keep our blood sugar low. Okay, so if we balance our meals, right, or pair them together with things, that's going to help balance our blood sugar. Okay, does that make sense? So anytime I'm going to have something that's just primarily a carbohydrate, what you're doing here as well, okay, I'm going to balance it out with a little bit of fat, okay, so which I'll have in the hummus or the baba ganoush. Not to mention, broccoli has a high amount of fiber, so it's going to be it's going to keep that blood sugar spike from coming as well. Okay. All right, lunch. It is a tough one. Because you're thinking about something fast. Yeah, I mean it's tough to get something that's not convenient from a sandwich shop or whatever, right? I mean we do Whole Foods, you can pop in there and get a really awesome salad really quickly. So we'll just say a chicken salad. Right? It's pretty easy. And if you're gonna, as far as like the dressing, because that's generally where people jack salads up is the dressing, right? What I like to do is if it's just a plain chicken salad, there's nothing really on it, right? What I'll throw, you can throw more vegetables or whatever on it. You can put some nuts and seeds on there, just spice it up a little bit. But I just go with like a balsamic vinegar. Notice I didn't say et, vinegar, not vinaigrette. Okay, so the vinegar itself is good. Okay, possesses a little bit of sugar, but it's good itself. Okay, and if it doesn't have like any other fats on it, I can throw some olive oil on it, and I assure you it's going to taste good. Okay, I'm a big fan of that balsamic vinegar just because it makes everything taste awesome to me. All right, so I did my workout. Right, I had maybe like a small piece of fruit prior. Give me a little bit of energy, right? And then afterwards, I have a post-workout shake. Okay.
Like one that you made in your own blender, or like a
blender, shaker, whatever you've got, like yeah.
Or like a cream, like a powder.
Yeah, a powder.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's something I'm going to talk about here in a
Okay.
second. Is I do recommend if you're an athlete and if you train, work out. then I do recommend taking some form of a like post-workout, like a powdered shake or powdered protein. And I also recommend those for convenience things, right? So something very fast, you need to get some nutrition in you really quickly. It helps you from when you're on, like on the go type thing. You can just make a quick shake, or if you're going out to eat with people and you don't want to do any of that, the chips and the salsa and stuff like that. You can have a shake. It's going to kind of hold you over till the meal happens. So I recommend a good protein powder for that. All right, so we've got past our workout. What's our dinner look like? Some form of lean meat, right? We had chicken, so we just go fish. Say salmon. You guys like salmon?
Yeah.
Okay. Salmon. We'll do some steamed veggies.
I like squashes, are they good?
So they are. So squash, we didn't list those as far as that, but they're lower nutrient just because they're higher in carbohydrate. Okay. Still have some health benefit to them. They're just higher in carbohydrates than some of the others. That's why we were listing just primarily like the higher nutrients. Okay. Steamed veggies, the squash is really good. I love it, especially when it's salted. I'm a big fan when it's grilled or sauteed. And then we'll go some rice, right? You can even throw maybe a small potato or something in there. All right. So besides cereal, what are we going for our midnight snack, or like just like an early evening snack?
Wine?
A
shake doesn't sound bad.
You could do a shake. You could just purely do a protein shake. One thing that I've done, what's that?
Cheese?
So if you could do a cheese, but you know you're at that time of night you're trying to stay away from the stuff that's going to sit on you, right?
Okay.
So because your body is slowing down at that point. Here you're still good because you're within a 2-hour window or so. Okay. By the time you get to that snack at night, your metabolism is slowed down. You're preparing for bed. Your your melatonin is high, right? You're ready for sleep. So what's going to happen when you sleep is mostly it's going to be storing things. Okay. So a protein would not be bad, right? Or even like you can do like a half serving of fruit. With maybe some nuts or almond butter or things like that, you know, something that's going to just kind of tide you over, right? So, fruit, and we'll say nuts. There's many other things that can be in there. You can get creative with it. But for the most part, when you're eating this, we have done what? If you're eating like this on a regular basis, what have you done? In sense of what we were before.
More protein.
Okay, definitely more protein, right? Okay, so more protein. Okay, what else?
Better fat, less carbs, or
Okay.
good carbs.
Absolutely. So we're all saying one thing, right? We're a higher nutrient. And believe it or not, lower calorie. And what we just did was we reversed what we just did, okay? What we were eating, all right? And this is a low inflammatory diet. High nutrients, lower in calorie. We're not overeating because we're following those 5 principles, right? Our inflammation is low because we're actually eating foods that are actually come from the earth, basically, and we don't have to work harder to break them down, okay? If we're living like this, what kind of health benefits are happening? We didn't really touch on some of the, we talked a little bit about living in the disease state, okay? So we're reversed that now, and we're now out of the disease state. What are some good things that are going to happen?
Energy.
Absolutely. High energy. Better sleep. Right? Better recovery.